Hello everyone, welcome to Nahid's Life. My son and I visited San Marcos Spring Lake in March 2020. There are many places in San Marcos that you would love to visit. San Marcos Spring Lake is one of them. This springs is the second largest natural cluster of springs in Texas. San Marcos, Texas is about 30 miles southwest of Austin and 46 miles northeast of San Antonio. Although Spring Lake is highly protected, but it is accessible to visitors through the Meadows Center of Water and the Environment, a program of Texas State University, which offers a beautiful glass-bottom boat tours to explore and learn about the ecosystem. And this service is continuing since 1945. Now we will explore this lake for half an hour by a glass-bottom boat. I hope you will also enjoy the boat trip with us. A tour guide will operate the boat and will provide us all the information about the Spring Lake. If you listen carefully to the tour guide, you will get lot of information about the Spring Lake.
Most of the lake that's covered with these mats of vegetation. One to look out for that's kind of neat is the Tobamba plant. You'll see some of it. It's brighter green, kind of bushier, and it's like a bottle brush. We're going to see a lot of it right up here, but you may notice one surefire way to identify it. It's got a white flower. It blooms underwater. It's one of the few plants that does that around here. And yeah, we're coming up on a big patch of Tobamba right now. But then if you keep looking down, you'll notice that the deepest point right here, there's something going on. Something's moving down there, something's making plants move, right? So that's where the water is coming out. This is our first spring that we'll see. We call this one Crater Bottom. It is kind of like deeper right in that spot than the rest of the lake bed around it, so it's kind of like a crater. Yeah, all along that fissure in the rock, basically, you've got what we call a high-pressure spring. Plants are kind of blowing in the wind around it. And from here, basically, we're not going to go too much farther this direction because there's a wall. The boat can't really make it up that wall, so this is really the limit of where we go up here in the headwaters. But from this point, which is really like the first major spring, the farthest upstream spring that we can reach, you're about, if you followed the river, if you turned around and kept going and got down to the dam, which is the other wall at the other end of the lake, and you could go over that, not in this boat, but theoretically if you could. We could travel as the river flows about 260 miles all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the ultimate destination for all this water. But it's only this clear and this nice for the first 5 miles or so. It was so nice here that it attracted people to come out in 1929 and built that building over there that's up against the hillside. That was originally a hotel and resort. They opened it in 1929, which was not a very auspicious year for a hotel to open. So it was quickly actually sold and converted into like a private school. But in the 1950s, when this place started taking off again, it turned back into a hotel. However, today, if you go inside, there is on the first floor, there's no longer rooms for it, but on the first floor you can see some exhibits and aquariums. Has anybody been over there yet today? While they were waiting for their boat? Well, awesome. Well, then you'll all get a chance to check it out after the tour. I definitely recommend doing so because we're going to see a lot of stuff out here, but there are organisms and creatures that are very cool and unique to this spot that you can't see on the tour. But you do have them on display inside the aquarium. So right there, it is about 14 feet down to the bottom. You know, it isn't a really big lake compared to like Lake Travis and maybe like the other major lakes around here. You know, this is a fairly small lake. These dams are very big. one of the older lakes west of I-35 actually, or what would later be I-35. That's one of the few places we see catfish these days is by the Wisemuller Spring. But the only ones I've seen there are that big of a
Big school of fish.
Yeah, that's those shiners and tetras. And, you know, they eat water bugs basically, and you don't see it while you're up this high, but all those plants are full of like little tiny bugs, crustaceans, things like that. And whenever we drive over the plants in shallow water, that tends to kind of stir them up. So a lot of times fish kind of follow the boat, and then you don't realize it until you flip around like that and you got fish behind you. But another place where the bottom is constantly being stirred up, so this becomes like a feeding zone for the fish that's powered by the springs, is this little spot right here. I think it's pretty cool because it kind of looks almost like snow on the bottom. You may have noticed the number on the front of this boat is boat 1963, right? And you know, there were originally 10 boats here. The first one was built in the late 1940s. But this one built in 1963. Just a couple years later, in 1965, there was a major news event for San Marcos. And back then, you know, San Marcos was pretty small, so this doesn't sound that crazy, you know, these days. But back in 1965, this was big news. They had a celebrity of the time who visited the park, and he was a pretty big celebrity at the time. His name was Johnny Weissmuller. He played Tarzan, which is what everyone knew him as. But he was also an Olympic swimmer and had several gold medals in swimming. So it was kind of like if you had a combination of like Brad Pitt and Michael Phelps. He was he had two different things he was famous for. And he supposedly jumped off the boat he was on, swam down to the bottom of the lake right here at this spot, and took a drink out of the spring at the bottom. Now, one thing that might make that sound impressive is that it is, you know, it's maybe about 15, 16 feet down to the bottom there, and then the water is coming out at a rate of hundreds of gallons a minute. So it's coming out with a lot of force, and that was played up a lot because he was a strong swimmer, and you'd think you'd have to be to get down there and get a drink of the water. It's not the easiest task in the world, but that water as it comes out is kind of disperses pretty quickly, so it's strong enough to knock fish back. But a good swimmer wouldn't really worry too much about being blown back by the spring. At least not these days as we see it. And you can see that down there, that sunfish found something to eat, right? You notice he kind of puffs the silt as he finds something, and then he just sort of shoots all the dirt out, and hopefully he's got a bug or something in there that he's going to swallow. But that shows you just how soft the bottom is. That's one of the things about this place is that all this area like this is really, really soft bottom. So even if it looks shallow enough, like you could get out and walk on it, your feet would sink down into that mud, and you really wouldn't get very far. But that also means that there's all sorts of stuff that's been left by people over the years, all over the lake bed. You know, jewelry. I'm sure there's dozens of phones on the bottom of the lake at this point, cameras, things like that. And you know, if you drop it over the glass, it's going to hit the glass. It may not be in like new condition after you drop it, but it won't be lost. It'll be right there. You can just pick it back up. But if you drop it off the side of the boat, usually it's gone forever. Or at least until future archaeologists come and dig it up. Now it's a nice sunny day. I'm hoping that we'll see turtles down under the glass. But just so you know, if you want to cheat and spot one real easy, they're all along the hillside over here on those rocks and branches. A lot more of what isn't dissolved is like, but not solid rock, is like broken down into like fine-grained sand. Basically, as the water flows over the bedrock here, what you end up with are these bubbles. There are times, depending on how much rainfall we've had in Central Texas, that this whole pan of sand down below us will be totally covered in bubbles. It looks almost like the surface of the moon or something like that, you know. The name for these springs, though, is cream of wheat. And cream of wheat is like a cereal, kind of like grits or malto meal you put on the stovetop, and when it bubbles, it is really kind of what it looks like. But most importantly for the people that live here, you can basically wade right out to where the springs are. And instead of being 10 feet down like they are today, they'd literally be right in your feet. So you can drink out of the springs. And that was one of the best, sources of water that people in this area could find for thousands of years. This was a very important stopover for people moving around the area here. And no one else, it's really hard to recognize what the dam is because it's so old. It's covered in trees. It's an earthen dam, so it really just looks like an island. But there's a waterfall on either side. The one on the right, which is next to that building there, which is going to be a Kirby Lane Cafe pretty soon, used to be a spillway for a grist mill and a sawmill. So there's over, on average, it's about 170 to 200 cubic feet of water every second moving over those spillways. So it's a powerful motive force, and it was really the beginning of industrialized agriculture in the 19th century in this part of Texas, central Texas. So it was pretty cool. It was built or commissioned to be built by a guy named Edward Burleson. Texas, the state, used to be its own independent country, and Edward Burleson was vice president of Texas back then. In his retirement, he moved here and was the one that constructed this dam. But before that, this whole area, shallower areas would have been dry land, accessible to people. This whole bottom of this lake is basically like a big archaeological preserve, because everything that remained of all the people's campsites and workshops and trading posts that were located around the springs then got covered up by the water when they built the dam. So areas like this, one thing I think is kind of weird, there's like burrows for something, maybe eels or crawfish, in all this mud. But it is super, super soft, and it takes a lot of effort. You can actually excavate it out, and it's very, very rich stage, and it was underneath the water, and they had like a little sort of diving bell type backstage area where they'd get in the water, and then they would emerge from that volcano underneath the water. It's part of their performance. And now, these days, bass lay their eggs on it, so it's kind of a cool little fish habitat. But yeah, I haven't seen any mermaids swim without it.
There's bass right now. Bass.
Yep.
Touch it
That's
so
the
bad.
biggest one I've seen that runs through it.
I want to touch it so bad.
And we're actually about back where we started. My dock hand is giving up on me. These tours are supposed to last about half an hour. This boat is it's been recently retrofitted. And one of the changes from the infrastructure that Seabark used to have is they had a dock that was covered. And our dock isn't covered these days, as you can see. And so these boats sit out in the rain. All year round they sit out, especially in the elements. So this one has a drip line in it. Basically, it has a heat, like the sides of your house would. And that makes it a little more like a sailboat. So it catches the wind a lot more. And days like this, it just takes us a little bit longer to get back up to the dock because we have to fight the wind. But, the whole place here is seeing a lot of changes for a lot of different reasons. The elements were a big one. I know that we've seen some pretty crazy floods. In 2015, I was here, and there was a flood that went up above that railing. And you could put on waders and then walk around by where y'all were waiting to board this boat. And you see fish swimming around the fronts of the trees and over the fields of grass. It's pretty crazy. Because even though it flooded, the water was still clear because of all the sprinkler that's in with it. So it's a pretty crazy place sometimes. But I definitely recommend checking out the aquarium that y'all have to play before. And down to what next boardwalk if you're interested.
I hope already you get all the informations about the spring lake of San Marcos. Thank you all to watching this video.